Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Deidre Does, and today what I want to talk to you guys about is pretty much my journey into tech and pretty much how I went from being an environmental science major in undergrad to becoming a Geospatial Technical Program Manager. Really long title, but pretty much how I became that at big tech, namely Uber. And so I'm going to take you guys through that whole journey. And so the reason why I'm making this video is because I want to explain that the journey to get into tech, it's not always linear. I think sometimes people think that getting into tech is, involves getting a CS degree and picking up programming when you're really young, and that's the only way to get into tech. And I just want to dispel that and tell you that it's just not true. It's just not true. For me, I'm coming from a completely unrelated field, environmental science, and along the way, picked up programming and ended up at where I'm at now, at Uber. I started my undergrad with an environmental science degree. I thought it was a pretty, cool idea because at the time I was like, oh, I'm gonna save the earth and do things with animals, and that was my thinking at the time. And so I did my environmental science degree, and one of my professors suggested to do a GIS minor. And I thought, okay, great. Apparently those were really complementary towards each other. And just to elaborate, GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, which is essentially maps and using map data to visualize maps, right? So that's pretty much what I did. And so along the way, doing that program, one of my professors encouraged me to take Python because he thought it'd be very complementary to my GIS. And so basically I did this independent study kind of thing where pretty much it just involved me going on Code Academy to learn Python. And it was introductory Python. I think I got through about 75% at the time of the Code Academy course there. And, that was enough. And that was the extent of the Python that I learned at that time. Later on, after getting my first real big girl salary job, after getting that job, that's when I thought I would try my hand at writing these really small Python scripts, and they're pretty much just small little functions that would reclassify attribute tables of spatial data. And that was my first foray into actually using Python in a practical sense, and it actually served to be pretty useful at that job because I was able to take a table of data that we were manually trying to reclassify. We were trying to reclassify a specific attribute, and something that would have taken us hours to do with my script took us literally 5 minutes, if that. And so that's when I realized, wow, Python is super powerful. I need to keep figuring out how to use this because I only knew how to write really, really simple things, and I was copying pasting from websites. On the side, while I was at that same job, I was taking girl development classes in Ruby and more in Python because I was really trying to develop that skill set. I felt at my job at the time, they weren't really trying to genuinely encourage my growth, on the job in coding in Python. And so I just took it upon myself to do those classes outside of work. And I even took a JavaScript course because I knew that would be really good if I wanted to get into WebGIS. And so I took a JavaScript course. I took all these courses, these little courses outside of work just to kind of get myself more comfortable with programming. I was still trying to figure out how to really apply it. I wasn't quite there yet. I was still learning, and I still kind of had that drive within me. And so after I left that job, I ended up working for the city in a temp role. And in that temp role, I did the same thing, writing these really small Python scripts to kind of help reclassify data and automate just the reclassifying process of the spatial data sets that I was looking at. And that was praised at my job then because it was really helpful and it really speeded things up. And I swear to you, it was not even 10 lines of code. So at the time I didn't feel wow, this isn't much of anything and I'm getting praised for it. And I was just kind of okay, Like, this is cool. I'm happy. Like, all of that praise for 10 lines of code made me realize, wow, learning this stuff is really powerful. I need to figure out how to really start applying this to the work that I'm going to be doing in this field. And so after that job, I ended up getting a job in real estate. And it wasn't until about a year into the job where I felt comfortable, where I started programming. And so this is at about year, let's say, and so about year 4 into my career, this was when I really started to learn like more programming. And I remember me and a coworker of mine were really trying to figure out how to set up a PyCharm because we had no idea. And I was so determined to get this thing like started and to like really start automating, because I saw another coworker of mine who was doing some really amazing things with Google APIs and just also like Yelp APIs as well. And I thought that that was so cool. And I really wanted to do that myself. I remember, my coworker just sitting there spending like, all afternoon trying to get like PyCharm started and start to figure out how to like leverage like this Yelp API to pull like retail data. It took about like a week or so, maybe a little less, but I finally was able to put together like one of like my first really useful scripts, like that I was actually able to apply to like my work. And the script was just being able to pull business information and the retail information. That was super useful. And so once I realized like I could do that, I just started, getting more and more comfortable over time, over the next I would say about 6 months or so, like just trying to create like little projects like with Python, this time going over to like Google mapping APIs, trying to figure out how to like understand how to read the documentation and put the code together. And slowly but surely things start to click and make more sense. Granted, throughout this process, I struggled the whole way. I struggled the whole way. I didn't know what like a dictionary was. I didn't understand the concept of nesting dictionaries into each other when trying to access data into an API. I didn't quite understand what making a request was entirely. There were so many little things that I was like learning as I put these things together. Ultimately, all the pieces like were coming together. And by the time I left that job, I had so many different projects and so many different like scripts that I had written that were useful to my job that they really left an impact. That's when I realized my worth truly. And I realized, all right, I'm writing all these Python scripts and doing all of these things, and I want more money. I want more money. They weren't like paying me enough, and it didn't seem like a promotion or a real pay raise like commensurate to what I was bringing to the table at that point was really on the horizon. So I was just like, okay, I've got to find a new job. And so that's when I found my first tech job, and I worked for a cannabis tech company. That's where I had the freedom to do whatever I want because I was the only geospatial maps person on our data team. That was really awesome because it gave me so much flexibility to kind of tinker around with like more Python, and also it got me to explore more R, which I was taking a course in at the time. I was able to create like a cool like web app with R. It was useful, and people thought it was helpful. And so being able to explore like more of the Python, more R, and like being able to apply it to my work really helped and really gave me a great foundation to really, learn and showcase my skills. And subsequently, those projects were what I was able to relay into my interviews and kind of like expand on them more into my interviews at Uber. They were kind of like what helped me get the role. And it made me realize like the ability to teach yourself code and learn these things is super valuable, and they were valued, right? And I think that they kind of valued like my tenacity to like learn something that was so difficult and learn it on my own and apply it, to my job. And that was pretty much how I ended up like at my current role. And so I think if I were to sum it up, my career was primarily GIS and maps. And then about like 4 or 5 years into my career is when I really started aggressively adding the programming in. Prior to that, I was dabbling in it a little bit, but once I really started like adding the programming and showcasing my value, I think that's when it became much easier for me to transition into my current tech role right now. And I honestly couldn't be happier with the change right now in terms of obviously compensation, but also lifestyle, because now I have like, I'm remote and there's a lot of flexibility. All of those wonderful, fabulous perks that you get in tech, I have now. And it's just been really, really nice. It's been really, really nice. I just want to like also mention the fact that Sister Circle Black Women in Tech group on Facebook. I'm a part of that group on Facebook. And honestly, if it wasn't for me finding that group on Facebook, I wouldn't have found it in me to gain the courage to even apply for my current role at Uber, because that group was like really valuable for me understanding like my worth in terms of the skill set that I provide and my experience that I provide. Between me making that transition at the cannabis tech company to my current role and at Uber, it was really helpful in like helping me get like to that like mindset, because I honestly like saw the listing and I didn't apply for a month. And then I applied, and then I got the role. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please give it a like, a comment, subscribe, all of those really fun things. They help me out. I have so many more videos planned, and I'm finally in the headspace to do it, and really excited. So I will catch you guys later. Bye!